Well, hello there, and welcome to my kitchen table, a place in most homes where we can sit with family and friends and just talk for hours. This chat is regarding to true crime. I'm breaking these teeth in for the dog. So if that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. Let's see where we're off to today. We're off to Manchester, which is a major city in the northwest of England with a rich industrial heritage. The Castlefield Conservation Area's 18th century canal system recalls the city's days as a textile powerhouse, and visitors can actually trace this history at the Interactive Museum of Science and Industry. The revitalised Salford Quays dockyard now house the Imperial War Museum North and the Lowry Cultural Centre. The city itself has a population of just over 553,000, but the Greater Manchester area actually holds just over 2.8 million. It's huge. Well, huge in comparison to other cities in the UK. I mean, like London's got like 10 million. That's the top one. So, if you're ready, take a seat just here and I'll tell you a story. Actually, before I start telling you this story, I have to say, content creators on YouTube are very strongly monitored for what they say, basically. But because I don't get paid, I don't get monitored as much as others. So, but I'm trying to stick to the rules. So you'll have to excuse me if I say the wrong thing. But I'm using terminology. I've been really clever and written myself a story on pedophiles. You can't say pedophiles on YouTube, which is a bit ridiculous. But hey, you can't say drugs either. So yeah. So bearing in mind what those kind of people get up to, you can't say any of that either. So it's initials for everything. So if there's anything you want explained at the end, write it in the comments and I'll give you the answer. Okay. Right. On Friday the 18th of June 2010, Colin Blanchard, born the 5th of October 1970, of Yeafold, Rochdale, which is an area in Manchester, pleaded guilty to taking indecent photographs of children, distribution of an indecent image, and essay of a child under 13. Blanchard had previously pleaded guilty to 19 other charges in October 2009. He was given an indeterminate sentence for public protection, called IPP, and ordered to serve a minimum of 9 years, although the judge actually said he may never get out. He's a sick individual, and that's putting it politely. Which is a bit strange for me because I'm not normally polite. On the evening of the 8th of June, police arrested a woman by the name of Vanessa George, a worker at a nursery in Plymouth. George appeared in court on the 11th of June on charges of SA and making, possessing and distributing indecent images of children. She admitted to making 124 indecent images of children, targeting the young children of the nursery. George did not include the faces of the victims, which actually made it more difficult for the authorities to identify the victims, which made it 100 times worse for the parents of the victims because they didn't know whether their child was one of the ones that got assaulted or not. Vanessa George is a mother of 2, and she worked for a nursery. It's Little Ted's Nursery in Plymouth. It's an unincorporated is what they call it, which basically it's a non-profit association. Between late 2008 and early 2009, Vanessa George, Colin Blanchard, and another woman, I usually say lady, but this is no lady, Angela Allen, met on Facebook and then started to email and text each other. The messages were often of a sexual nature and moved to CA. The police believed that these three were having a contest to see who could produce the most depraved picture. George started taking indecent pictures of children between the ages of 2 and 5 at the nursery where she worked, and also a picture of her own 14-year-old daughter. George would often send Blanchard material captured during her working hours, and then Blanchard would share them with Allen. The trial was presided over by Mr. Justice Royce. George pleaded guilty to 7 counts of SA and 6 of making and distributing indecent pictures of children. On the 15th of December 2009, George was given an indeterminate sentence for public protection and told that she would serve at least 7 years, with the proviso that she must prove that she is safe to be in society before she is released. On Monday the 18th of October 2010, Tracy Dorber, who was born on the 13th of June 1966, of Bedford Road, Southport, was convicted after an 8-day trial of SA, arrangement or commission of a child, SEX offence, and 5 offences of permitting an indecent image to be taken. She was sentenced to 4 years for each offence, to be served concurrently. So she got 4 years. Because the judges in the UK don't know what consecutive means, you see. Somebody's removed it from all of their dictionaries, because they never use it. On the 5th of March 2010, Tracy Lyons, born the 8th of January 1970, of Hewlett Road, Portsmouth, had earlier pleaded guilty to assault of a child by penetration, SA of a child under 13, causing a child under 13 to engage in this activity, and 3 offences of distributing indecent photographs of a child. She was sentenced to 4 years for each offence, to be served concurrently, so she got 4 years. But she actually got given a 3-year extension to her licence as well. So after the 4 years, when she comes out, she's still on probation. Well, on licence. The jailing of Colin Blanchard, Tracy Lyons and Tracy Dorber marked the end of a complex and disturbing police investigation spanning 5 counties in the UK. That's like spanning 5 states in America, only smaller. This ended up uncovering one of the worst paedophile rings the UK has known. The 3 accused were the last to be dealt with in this case, which was triggered by the arrest of Plymouth nursery worker Vanessa George, accused of assaulting an unknown number of infants on a changing mat in Little Ted's nursery while photographing her actions for the gratification of others. The self-styled, and this is what she called herself, pedo whore mum, had, according to Justice Royce, who tried her case the previous October, aroused revulsion and incredulity, the shockwaves extending perhaps to every nursery school in the country. As detectives got to grips with George, others were tracked down too, including Tracy Lyons. Now, Tracy Lyons was a mother of 9. from Portsmouth, like I said earlier, who admitted to 6 charges, including 2 counts of essaying a toddler and distributing indecent images. Angela Allen pleaded guilty to distributing an indecent image and 4 counts of essay. All of the offences involved children. On the 15th of December, she was also given an indeterminate sentence with a minimum tariff of 5 years. The first time Blanchard, Lyons and Allen had been in each other's company was when they were standing in the dock. They'd never actually met each other. It was all virtual, all texting and emailing and WhatsApping, etc. Until then, like I said, they had a relationship that was totally virtual. For Alan, George and Blanchard, going equipped meant opening a Facebook or Bebo account and acquiring a camera phone and multiple MSN identities. Their only skills were the ability to translate their fantasies into text speak and the know-how to master picture messaging. Equally significant was the role played by Colin Blanchard himself, a man who insisted to police that he was led astray by manipulative women who had sought him out on the web. Transcripts obtained by the Guardian newspaper of Blanchard's interviews with detectives, together with details of at the heart of Greater Manchester Police's lengthy operation to catch him, describe instead a serial abuser who transfixed vulnerable women with access to children, luring these women into his depraved world. Blanchard twisted their moral compasses so they would feed his dark fantasies, abusing children to order, photographing the deeds and sending him image files as evidence. And police are certain that Blanchard would have continued in this vein, becoming increasingly brazen and sadistic had he not made a rare mistake. On the 5th of June 2009, Norman Ahmed called at his rented offices in Trafford Park, Greater Manchester, to check his emails. Ahmed found that his business partner, Colin Blanchard, had left his Gmail account open. Blanchard was away in Dubai on a business trip, and suspecting that the Liverpool-born IT consultant was doing deals behind his back, Ahmed had a nose around. Wouldn't we all? More than a dozen picture attachments of children involved in SA, plus disturbing images of a naked Blanchard, spooled up. Ahmed was repulsed and immediately dialed 999 at our 911. The operator deferred to a supervising police inspector who dispatched uniformed scene of crimes officers from the Greater Manchester Police to get a detailed statement and take away the desktop computer. Ahmed informed them that Blanchard was actually due to return from Dubai the next day. Big and baldy, Blanchard strolled into the arrivals hall at Manchester Airport on Saturday the 6th of June 2009, only to be arrested and whisked off to Altrincham Station, where his laptop and iPhone were seized. The detective's first concern was to find out if the pictures were historic pictures, like that he downloaded or that someone sent him like 10 years ago, or were photographs of fresh abuse taken by Blanchard or someone he knew. Were there children who needed to be rescued, as well as abusers who had to be stopped? The world of paedophilia, the Greater Manchester Police's sexual crimes unit had discovered, was complex and hierarchical. Some were content to be consumers, procuring and exchanging images of children. Others wanted their victims unsullied. Those who had access to a real child sat at the top of the pile. At one end of the flesh market was Blanchard. The detectives wondered about that. Arrested under a superintendent's warrant, they had 36 hours to find out. Andrew Edwards, an IT technician at Greater Manchester Police's high-tech crime unit, which operated out of a claustrophobic room known at GMP Force headquarters as the Cave. He got a call on the Saturday morning. Operation Morley would be Edwards' first major assignment. His initial task was to get inside Blanchard's email account and take apart whatever hardware police recovered from his £350,000 home in Smithy Bridge, near Rochdale. He lived in a cul-de-sac of new builds known as Yea Fold. The shiny black Volvo remained parked in the driveway, but no one was home. You see, Blanchard's wife, Anne, who he met while she was an undergraduate at Liverpool John Moores University, had been forewarned that her husband was to be quizzed, and she collapsed. So she was being cared for elsewhere. Inside the home was immaculate. Even the toilet paper had been turned down. Blanchard clearly wielded absolute control, recalled the detectives. His swagger was stamped throughout the colossal dining room table hewn from a slab of marble to the immense models of yachts placed on the shelves. Even the climate was controlled in his conservatory. It had been fitted with air conditioning. Now, not only is that a rare find in Rochdale, it's a rare find in the UK, full stop. Edwards made a list of what officers removed. But hear this. A Nintendo gaming machine, a Sony PSP, an Acer laptop, 2 pen drives, memory dongles that could be plugged into a computer, a Hewlett-Packard laptop, 2 external hard drives, 3 memory cards, an Apple computer, a Netgear disk drive, and a Nokia N70 mobile phone. It represented a haystack of gigabytes that poor Edwards was going to have to sift through. God love him. There was also an iPhone, but it was so new. The Greater Manchester Police didn't even know how to open it, how to crack it. They didn't have the software for it. Over the next few crucial hours, the IT technician tore the guts out of Blanchard's gadgets using C4P, which is a digital tool devised by the Canadian police that sought out and collected images stored on any computer, even reassembling those that had been overwritten and broken up. Edward's task was made a little easier, as Blanchard used no passwords or encryption. 3 out of 4 of his email addresses were just his name, or variations of his name. On the morning of Monday, the 8th of June, Detective Sergeant Bob Willis of GMP's Sexual Crimes Unit, an old hand at these types of inquiries, turned up for work at Nexus House in Ashton-under-Lyne, the new headquarters for the Criminal Investigations Division. He was pulled to one side by his detective inspector. He said, "Don't take your coat off. There's an urgent inquiry to make in M Division. M Division is what covered the Trafford and Aldringham stations." I contacted them, found out about Blanchard, and arranged a meeting with the officers dealing with it," he said. Within the hour, Detective Constable Andy Pilling from GMP's Sexual Crimes Unit had also arrived, and together with DS Willis, set off for Altrincham. They'd leave that meeting with a group of 20 images to study, and oh my God, did they study them. All of which Blanchard had received from unknown sources. They depicted naked babies and toddlers, the oldest no more than 18 months. They were unusual for being so young, and there was a woman's torso and hand featured in some of the pictures. They immediately examined the images for clues as to their origin. Pilling said, "We could see from the electrical sockets that it was somewhere in Britain. We've got very distinctive plug sockets with 3 prongs. The windows made it look like a church hall. There was linoleum on the floor. All were taken in the same room and on the same changing mat. It looked like the material was coming from a creche, a social club, or a children's centre. We had to find it, locate the woman, and shut it down," DC Pilling said. Digging into Blanchard's history, detectives saw he had been previously arrested in 2002 after obscene images of children were found on his computer. He then claimed in mitigation that his uncle had essayed him and other members of the family. He escaped a jail sentence. But he was placed on the sex offenders register for 5 years. Within 2 years of dropping off the register, he was at it again. What kind of man was he? They dug into his personal life and discovered, bear in mind he lived in this big £350,000 house on a posh estate. They discovered that he owed £8,000 in unpaid utility bills. His house was slated for repossession, and his shiny black Volvo, bought on instalments, was about to be towed away. But in the interview room, he was confident, he was cocky. While he admitted to possessing the images, he claimed CIA sickened him. He said the only reason he has this material was because he'd been preyed on by a manipulative woman whom he had accidentally met on Facebook in December 2008, using a dating app called Are You Interested? Lonely, he confessed to her of having been abused as a child, and then she'd responded by sending him this filth. Yeah, right. DC Pilling and DS Willis mulled over V. George, whom Blanchard said lived in Plymouth. The detective went back to the images and noted the woman's torso in one of them. There was an emblem on the t-shirt that she wore. Was it a bear? He said, "We contemplated going to the manufacturer of similar t-shirts because they'd done that before. They'd gone to similar lengths. Once they had spotted in the corner of a photo featuring a young girl being abused a distinctive ashtray on a table. With further research, they found the J.W. Lee's Brewery in Middleton had manufactured it. Plotting which pubs the brewery served, they then calculated which schools were near and eventually found the girl." D.S. Willis recalled, "We had specialist officers from a covert unit involved. They focused on the social networking sites Blanchard had frequently used. This unit could deal with such matters without trace and with the appropriate authority in place. We received a call from one of the covert officers. They'd found V. George on Facebook and Bebo, and there was a friend of George's on the Bebo account who had the same t-shirt with the same logo, and the name Little Ted's was written on it. A message had also been left saying, "Great picture, Vanessa." So they now knew that it was Vanessa George, not just V. George, because that could have been a man. Detectives searched for Vanessa George on the Plymouth electoral roll and found a woman by that name living in Efford. By 4 p.m, police had found the Plymouth house where she lived and located Little Ted's nursery nearby. On the Monday night, Devon and Cornwall police were alerted. The call taker flagging the request as urgent. In Manchester, DS Willis told DC Pilling, "If someone doesn't do this now, we'll get in a car and go down ourselves." It's a heck of a drive down to Portsmouth and Plymouth. At the cave, IT technician Edwards was urgently preparing an evidence package, a disc with a selection of images. Then, Greater Manchester Police Motorway Unit hurtled down to Coventry to rendezvous with a team from Devon and Cornwall. They'd come up and the Manchester ones had gone down and met in the middle, basically. And they passed over the package of evidence against her. At Nexus House, the police HQ, DC Pilling and DS Willis sat and waited for the phone to ring. The next day, DC Pilling recalls, they watched on television, TV, as the story exploded. There were chaotic scenes outside Plymouth Magistrates Court, but while the public focused on the horror of a nursery worker abusing toddlers, up in Manchester, detectives suspected Blanchard was at the helm of a far bigger enterprise that had now been tipped off. So, if you knew George or Blanchard and you had iffy stuff on your computer, now's the time to clear your hard drive. Edwards needed to get a move on. He used a powerful software tool, Encase, to harvest live and deleted files, reaching into Blanchard's data swamp to pull out copies of chat and texts, even on mobile phones. He cracked the iPhone too, discovering messages that reached back to well before Christmas 2008. As George was remanded in custody, Edwards' investigations threw a light on the true nature of her relationship with Blanchard. He was by far the more demanding, dominating party, and had lured George into a dangerous role-playing game. Vanessa George had been using an email address that encompassed her web persona, daddy'sprincess@hotmail.com. From that, just streams of chat that Blanchard responded to, pushing her fantasies into darker places. Much of it revolving around the imagined abuse of her own daughters. "I think she'd keep it a secret. If you did it, then I did," George told him one night. "Are you going to do it tonight?" Blanchard asked. "I might tomorrow," said George. More chat came via vgeorge@live.co.uk. "I want pics of them asleep," Blanchard requested. "Get them drugged up and take pictures of them asleep." George was playful and flirtatious with him. She said, "When I've met you properly, I'll do things like that, okay? Kiss, kiss, kiss." George was looking for more than a sex text partner. She wanted sex and romance. Blanchard didn't. George's mobile phone, a handset she referred to as her dirty phone, zapped thousands of messages to Blanchard, narrating in real time just random thoughts, including the abduction of a child that she'd spotted that had been separated from her mother at a railway station. However, in the light of what they already knew from finding photos taken at little Ted's nursery, the line between erotic suggestion and reality had already been crossed. DC Pilling went back to Blanchard. He still insisted his role was not easy to describe, and had thought George had been downloading the images she was sending him rather than photographing children she was abusing. Yeah, right. DC Pilling did not buy it, just like we don't buy it, right guys? He said, "I knew Blanchard's role was one of importance in the scheme of things, but we had to prove it." A week after Blanchard's arrest, another woman's name emerged from the mass of Blanchard's digital files. In July 2008, 7 months before he'd met Vanessa George on Facebook, he'd begun frantically texting, emailing and chatting with a woman nicknamed Ange Bank. Edwards had found thousands of references to her on Blanchard's computer and iPhone. There, after obtaining a warrant from the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, or rather under that act, that gives detectives power to demand registration details from an internet service provider, led back to an email address 306@live.co.uk. Edwards established that Ange Bank lived in Nottingham and had been using an untraceable pay-as-you-go, what some people call burner phones, pay-as-you-go phone to text Blanchard in conversations that dwelled on the essay of children. Blanchard had cheered her on, introducing into the conversation the subject of his own childhood abuse, eliciting from her the revelation that she too had been abused. Blanchard then introduced this woman to Vanessa George in the spring of 2009. Now, when I say introduced, not, oh, V, meet Ange. No, none of that. It was just via text and messages, emails, all that kind of stuff. So this actually cemented a web-based sex triangle. According to Edwards' findings, on the 7th of March 2009, Ange Bank sent Blanchard photos of herself committing CA with a toy golf club, a stick of rock shaped like a man's organ, a crayon, and a metal tube. Blanchard then forwarded some of these images to George in Plymouth. She soon responded, sending 5 images she had taken at Little Ted's directly to Ange Bank on the 19th of May. By the end of that month, with both women vying for Blanchard's attention, Ange Bank asked Blanchard if he wanted to join her in hating a child. "Making an infant scream," she said. Desperate to identify Blanchard's second woman, police scoured the net and found a Facebook page for Ange Bank, who lived in Nottinghamshire. Her real name was Angela Allen. one of 9 women with that name who lived in the county. The warrant came back on the 16th of June 2009, and with the information gained because of that warrant, it revealed a postcode that matched only one of them. Armed with an evidence package, Nottinghamshire police raided Alan's rundown home in 9 Acre Gardens, Bulwell, Nottinghamshire, on the 17th of June 2009. The 39-year-old woman they arrested was a single mother. Her house, next to an industrial estate, was devoid of furniture apart from a computer. As Pilling feared, Alan had already tried to erase her hard drive by dragging everything into the trash bin. But Edwards recovered material while detectives went back to Blanchard. In reality, police knew far more than Blanchard realised. Edwards had by now logged 16,014 images of children, as well as violent adult porn and bestiality. Blanchard and his dog. That was swapped between George, Alan and Blanchard. There were also 229 hardcore porn movies. Despite the public focus on George, Blanchard was emerging as far more dangerous. DC Pilling said, although he maintained his innocence. It wasn't me. 16,000 and odd film pictures and hardcore porn on his systems, but it wasn't him. Blanchard said, I just didn't want the hassle. I didn't want to be involved in that. That's why I stopped with V. That's why I was stopping with Ange. And that, it just wasn't me. I realised that it just wasn't. It didn't do anything for me. Fantasy's one thing and that. But it went beyond that. And that's when it got a bit, stupid. You know what I mean? He was asked, you knew she was taking pictures of children? Yeah, I didn't know she was taking them. I thought she was downloading them. It wasn't until later that she told me that she'd taken them. He told her to do it. I'm just trying to understand where the pictures came from, said the officer. Because both of them, that's what their fantasies were, Blanchard said. What, to be abusers of children? Yeah. More names came out of the data pot. One of them was a divorced mother from Liverpool, my city, who Blanchard had begun texting in May 2009, 5 months after he'd met George, and at least 10 months after he'd met Alan. I can't identify her because, although police discovered image files from her on Blanchard's computer, her hard drive had been cleared. So they had no evidence against her. But for Greater Manchester Police, an observable characteristic had emerged of, Blanchard's babes. All Blanchard's women were middle-aged mothers, divorcees, or women who were alienated from their partners and were suffering from low esteem. All with children. Another name was found, someone who used the internet avatar of Foxy Witch. There was a torrent of chat between Foxy Witch web at hotmail.com and Blanchard that had begun in October 2008. Police eventually found a MySpace site that revealed, MySpace, God, that's how long ago it was, that revealed the woman's identity as Tracy Lyons. She fitted the profile of Blanchard's women. A mother of multiple children. She was in her late 30s and a slogan printed above numerous photographs of her offspring online read, "Where can I find the perfect honey for me?" When the police turned their focus on Lyons, they found that she had been introduced to Alan, although she knew nothing of George or the Liverpool divorcee. Like the others, I was saying others and Lyons at the same time then, like the others, Lyons quickly responded to Blanchard's advances, both of them doing pornographic request shots for each other. DC Pilling recalled, "We were now extremely worried. Narrowing down their search for Lyons to an address in the home counties, Greater Manchester Police contacted Hampshire Police at the end of June 2009, but in the absence of any hard evidence, the force had to hold back. In Manchester, poor Edwards, God love him, he did work hard on this case. He slogged on, examining a poorly lit film of a woman during essay of a boy. To enhance the quality, Greater Manchester Police actually hired Richard Neve, who's a medical artist. The new screen captures showed that the figure was not the Liverpool divorcee, because obviously they knew what she looked like. The images were sent to Hampshire. DS Willis received a call back. They matched Lyons. So it was her doing the essay to a boy. Willis drew their attention to the room featured in the film. He had spied a miniature football kit seen on the wall. Searching through team strips, he obviously knew nothing about football. He was certain it was Arsenal. The Hampshire detectives revealed that Lyons was a massive Arsenal fan. And after showing her the stills, she just caved in. That left police with just one battered Nokia phone, recovered from Blanchard's house. Expecting very little, DC Pilling sent it to TechnoCell, a specialist forensic company in Cheshire. They recovered one disturbing sequence that began with Blanchard's shaved head, showing him as he got ready in his bathroom. He photographed himself sitting in his Volvo, the Volvo that was about to get repossessed. And then came shots of a freckled woman being played with by a man, if you get what I mean, wearing a distinctive watch strap. The following photos taken in the same room of a child being abused by the woman. One of the last frames showed Blanchard wearing the same distinctive watch strap. He had photographed his own hand doing the woman. The police now had him. But who was his accomplice? The entire sequence, recorded in 90 minutes, 1 hour was the equivalent of a 30-minute radius of travel around Blanchard's house. How they worked that out, God only knows. Which left half an hour for Blanchard inside the woman's home. They drew a circle around Blanchard's Rochdale property on a map, and on the 13th of June 2009, confronted him with the photos that they documented as the Freckles series. Gives people with freckles a bad name, that doesn't it? Blanchard claimed not to know the woman's name, but he said she lived in Southport, which is just up the road from me. He helped with landmarks, recalling a hospital, a roundabout, and a school. I actually know where they're talking about. I used to be a taxi driver, by the way. Police overlaid these on Google Maps, eventually plumping for one location. DC Pilling said, "We drove to Southport to check it out. 2 days later, police arrested Tracy Dorber, a twice divorced, middle-aged woman, mother. She was, it transpired, the first of Blanchard's women. They'd met in early 2008, well before Alan, George, the Liverpool divorcee, or Tracy Lyons. Detectives also now traced the last of Blanchard's conquests, a woman who cannot be named, but who called detectives shortly after Blanchard's arrest. God love her. She said she'd begun dating him after meeting him on Facebook. She says they texted and messaged each other, and he'd confided in her about having been sexually abused as a child. And then he sent her images of CA taking place. And she was like, what the flippin' heck? In the end, had this been Blanchard's most profound realisation? That he could win control of others and direct them to commit heinous acts on his behalf, in order to double his pleasure, while having no risk. Real friends and relationships are hard work. They were unpredictable and required constant attention. But Facebook pals can be quashed when he grew bored, and revived when he was in the mood. Here was a convenient, thrilling, and very tidy way to maintain a modern life, one that did away with all responsibilities and consequences, as he thought. Vanessa George was released from prison in September 2019 after serving 10 years. The parole board actually approved her release in July 2019. It took 2 months for it to get sorted. As a conditions of her parole, or her licence as it is in the UK, she's not allowed to enter any part of Devon and Cornwall. Angela Allen was awarded parole in December 2019, although I have searched and searched and searched again. There's actually no confirmation of her release. So we don't know whether she was kept in or she's out. Lyons was released from prison in October 2011, 9 months after her conviction. She's actually spent 2 years in jail. Now bear in mind, she was imprisoned on IPB. She shouldn't have been released before the 4 years. And then she should have applied for parole, gone to the parole hearing, etc., etc. But they let it out because they just treated it like it was a regular sentence and let it out halfway through, because she'd served 2 years of a 4-year sentence. She was out. Her release was condemned by a lot of people, but in particular child protection charity Kidscape. The spokesperson Claude Knight actually stated, "This early release is a betrayal of the victims and their families, whose suffering will continue for years." Colin Blanchard was sentenced to an indeterminate imprisonment sentence with a minimum of 9 years to serve. That was on January the 10th, 2011. He's had numerous parole applications turned down, but the latest on his parole information is, for some reason, his hearings have been postponed and rearranged on about 7 occasions. Well, the judge said he might never get out. It looks like he's right, because he's still in. Somebody actually wrote a book about this. Well, about Vanessa George. Who's Vanessa Smith? Vanessa George. In March 2010, it was written by Wensley Clarkson. Vanessa, A Portrait of Evil. Controversy wasn't in it. Jeez. When parents of the victims, they just went berserk about it, calling it sick and saying that they were horrified. The author defended his position on the book, claiming it was written as a genuine attempt to understand what George did and why she did it. Because she's a sick cow and she abused other people's children as well as her own. This whole case, I called it the ring of depravity. This whole case prompted an increased recognition of the problem of female pedophiles. I'll just say it quick. Sex offenders and the scale of their offending, with one estimate suggesting that at least 10% of offenders are female. Don't know what my little dog's barking about, he must be having a bad dream. The case also challenged the false stereotype that only men abuse children. Previously, some had attempted to blame the behaviour of female abusers on men, suggesting that the female abusers were usually acting under duress or coercion. But this case shows that the perpetrators were acting of their own free will and for their own sexual gratification. Michelle Elliott of the child protection charity Kidscape that I just mentioned earlier stated, the reality is women abuse. Women abuse without men telling them to abuse. She said, and I think we have to acknowledge it for the sake of the children who are being abused. This case also promoted calls for more research on the offending of females. They should have research on the offending of male and female, because somebody needs to get to the bottom of it. Why does it happen? Little Ted's, the private nursery where the abuse took place with Vanessa George, was situated in the ground of Lara Green Primary School. The nursery closed at the time of the first arrest. The day she was arrested, they closed the doors. That was in June 2009. In September 2010, a new facility opened in its place, a preschool unit named Green Shoots. It's a great name for the nursery, isn't it? Which was to be managed jointly with the school. So it wasn't just a private entity anymore. It was being run by the school. And the head teacher was actually on its board of trustees. Anne Redrop, she was the prosecutor for the Crown. So she's from the Crown Prosecution Service. She's a lawyer, a barrister, who dealt with all the cases. She said, bear in mind she had a hell of an insight into these people. Colin Blanchard turned out to be an evil man who controlled 4 women in one of the most sickening paedophile rings this country has seen. He encouraged these women to take and share ever more horrific images of the SA of children. As if this was not bad enough, he encouraged them to physically abuse children to produce those pictures. In the case of Vanessa George, this led to a hideous betrayal of trust of those parents who relied on her to look after their children in the nursery where she worked. She showed a complete disregard for the lives of the victims and their families, all of whom have been left devastated by these crimes. She said anyone who was in court to hear details of these cases cannot fail to be horrified of why these women, which at this time it was the three, Vanessa George, Angela Allen and Tracy Lyons, committed such shocking acts of CA when prompted by Colin Blanchard, or why Tracy Dorber encouraged such activity to take place in her presence. My thoughts: all men involved in such activity, such depravity, should be castrated. And women, FGM's too good for them. Hi guys, it's only me. Yes, looking very bright and shiny, I know. The sun's out in Liverpool, what can I say? I have an update since recording this video, so I thought I'd put it on now before I actually publish it. Save you coming back. How good am I? So some news has actually been published regarding Blanchard's parole hearing. In a hearing behind closed doors in May 2024, Blanchard said he wished to be freed from jail. But Mr. Blanchard caused very serious harm to victims through his offending, the panel said. After considering the circumstances of his offending, the progress made while in custody, and the evidence presented at the hearing, the panel was not satisfied that release at this point would be safe for the protection of the public. They also said he has developed a clear preference for prepubescent children and bestiality, with, in the panel's view, a fetish of parents having sex with their own children. So there you go. He's been refused parole. So he's in for at least another 2 years, because the next parole hearing will be in 2 years' time. Ta-da! Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for allowing me to tell you this story. Thank you so much for listening. More to the point. If you found it interesting, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. And please remember, smiling is the best way to face every problem, crush every fear, and hide every pain. I've been Sue, TTFN.